Plot holes are not something to worry about on zero drafts. Hey guys, ETJ Writes here. Today we are going to be talking about pantsing. When you're writing, pantsing is a term that means you're just making stuff up on the fly and you're not outlining. Now, there is a happy medium between outlining and pantsing, which is plantsing. So you're planning your pantsing. And I tend to do that more than I do straight up pantsing, but I definitely don't outline in detail. If I were to sit down and outline something and outline and outline and outline, number one, I would find it boring, and number two, well, I might as well write it. Why am I spending all this time planning it out when I could be writing it? Now, other people like to outline because to them, if they jump into drafting without an idea, a very detailed idea of where it's going, then it's like they're wasting their entire first draft. They could write a better first draft if they outlined it first. Me personally, I'm not a fast drafter. I like to take my time and work on my first drafts and really get my ideas out, sketched out in paper. Number two, I am okay with throwing away most of what I've written because all writing is practice. So that's why I pants versus outlining. Now, like I said, I am more of a plantser. So what that means is I do write an outline. It's basic, bare bones, what the story is, where it's going, how I envision the characters ending up. And then I sit down and fill in those details with really not a good idea of where I'm going. I start and then I veer wildly off my outline. And so as I go, I reverse outline. And that is a method where as you're writing, you create an outline that you are going to then refer back to. Like, this thing happened on the timeline here. This character is called that, and so on and so forth. And that way, I do end up with a nice outline, but it's my reverse outline as I go through the process of writing. And that's what works for me and my creative process and helps me feel joy when I'm writing. Each one of these methods, outlining, plantsing, pantsing, has its cons and its pros. The people who love outlining will tell you that that's the best way to go, and the people who love pantsing often say, yeah, there's no point to outlining, you might as well just do it. Again, as a plantser, I kind of fall somewhere in the middle. I do think it's important to know where you're going. I don't like to be stifled creatively, but if you're completely writing blind, you will run into trouble. That's when the dreaded writer's block occurs. How do we avoid writer's block? Well, we're pantsing. I'm going to go deeper into this in a series of videos I have planned all about how to write a zero draft going from nothing to finishing. But something that's part of that that really helps is learning structure. When you're pantsing, instead of just making everything up with no idea of where you're going, you can at least work from a structure. For example, the hero's journey. So you have a story laid out for you. You just need to fill it in with the characters. You can have them start in their ordinary life, and then there's the call to adventure, and they go off, and there's the dark points, and they find all the special items, and then they make it back home, either changed by their journey or the world around them has been greatly affected. And it's either a happy ending or a sad ending. Technically, the hero's journey, we expect a happy ending, but it doesn't have to be. A lot of times bittersweet works really, really well in epic adventures, whether it be fantasy, sci-fi, or what have you. There's other kind of structures you can use: 3-act structure, 5-act structure, fairy tale structure. Again, I'm going to go deeper into those in another video. But suffice to say, if you start somewhere and you say, okay, I've decided I'm going to have a happy ending, but my character's going to go through trouble first. You start writing your scene, and then you get stuck. Well, you have to throw an obstacle in that character's way, and then you go from there. And you might find you've created a terrible plot hole. Don't worry about it. You're going to come back and fix it later. Plot holes are not something to worry about on zero drafts on your first time writing, especially if you're pantsing and you don't know where it's going. The idea is just to enjoy the process, have fun. It's been talked about like gardening, where you just kind of throw seeds into the garden and see what sprouts. And later you can go in with your hedge trimmers and cut everything to how you desire it. But you don't just go into your garden, to carry that metaphor a little further, and throw weeds in your garden. You do have some kind of good material. So I would advise, learn about structure. Watch movies, read plays and books and listen to radio shows, read books and articles on the craft, listen to podcasts and YouTube videos, and make sure that you are studying how structure goes together. Because if you get stuck, structure is what will help you. Really, when someone's outlining, what they're doing is following a structure sheet and structuring everything at certain points from here to here to here to here to here. When you're pantsing or plantsing, it happens more organically. But you have to keep that structure in your head. So as you're writing, let's say you're planning your story to be about 100,000 words. And when you get to about 25,000 words, you know that that's a beat where something has to happen, a turn has to happen. And we've got to have established all this stuff happening. And if you're looking at what you've written already, and you say, okay, I'm still establishing the characters, a big moment hasn't happened yet, well, you know that it's time to throw in that change. And you're not writing to something that you have outlined in detail, but you know generally where the beats fall, and so you can write and feel comfortable with it. And again, when you're editing, you can go back and say, okay, I wrote 50% of this 100,000 words and it's just junk. So I'm gonna have to cut that, edit, and then go back and write in here to make that work. For outliners, that's kind of the worst nightmare. I have to go back and do more work, but for pantsers, we're like, yay, more writing, more discovery, more fun. Just kind of my thoughts on pantsing right now is that I love doing it. I like to have a little bit of a plan, but most importantly, I know story structure. So when you're writing that story, you go back in and you make sure things fit to that structure. And you pick whatever structure you like, particularly if you're writing for film, you're going to use 3-act more than anything else. If you're writing for television, you may use the 5-act structure. Same thing with drama. With books, you may be writing a short story, so it has to have a very short structure, or you may be writing an epic sprawling novel where you have to use the hero's journey and go through 12 to 24 points of little things that happen along the way. Whatever it is that you are trying to do, learn that structure, internalize it, live, breathe, sleep, think that structure until it's just something you can regurgitate out as you're writing and it feels organic, but you're not, like I said, throwing weeds into your garden. You're throwing flowers and you'll put them in place later, but you're doing it from a place of knowledge. So if you're someone that's been told that you have to outline to have a good book, and you've tried to outline and you just hate it, why not just throw out outlining and try pantsing instead, or plantsing? Get an idea of where you're starting, where the middle is, and how you're ending. So that's where the character starts off, some big thing that happens in the middle that's going to really shake up their world, and then what's going to be the consequences at the very end. And then yes, you have swaths of material in between, but fall back on structure, fall back on how structure affects character development and world building and all those kind of things, and you can create a really great story that, even if it has to be totally cleaned up from between draft 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, how many revisions you need, you're going to have something that you can feel happy creating instead of forcing yourself into any particular mold. And if you like outlining, more power to you. All these methods are valid, but for me, I like pantsing, and if you have never tried it before, give it a try. Well, until next time, happy writing.